Lakers fans, DeMar DeRozan has been a free agent since Sacramento waived him back in the summer. Every report since has named the same suitors: the Heat, the Cavaliers, the Nuggets, the Pistons, even a Raptors reunion. Nobody named the Lakers, not once, not in any real report. And at 11:48 this morning, Shams Charania said the entire list everyone had been tracking was incomplete. DeMar DeRozan has agreed to sign with the Los Angeles Lakers. Before you scroll off, I'll tell you the specific reasoning Shams gave for why Los Angeles beat out every publicly reported suitor and what Luka Doncic posted minutes later. Here's how it went down. Shams delivers. I want to explain why this stayed completely off the radar. My understanding is that Rob Pelinka reached out to DeRozan's camp directly weeks ago, specifically pitching a genuine role as a second unit scoring option next to Luka, deliberately staying out of the public reporting cycle other suitors were engaging in. DeRozan's camp found that specific, quiet framing more compelling than the more publicly reported options. This is a veteran minimum agreement. Read that back. A deliberate, quiet recruiting approach explaining the total media blackout around this specific pursuit. And minutes later, Luka posted, one of the best mid-range scorers of his generation, walking into a real bench role next to me. This is smart, low-cost value. That's Luka specifically framing the actual role rather than offering a generic welcome. Now the whiplash. Every single report had Miami, Cleveland, Denver, or Detroit. Why Los Angeles? Here's the honest answer. DeRozan's camp specifically used the publicly reported suitors as leverage, while the real, quiet conversation with the Lakers happened in parallel. A common, if underreported, negotiating tactic that rarely gets caught by outside coverage in real time. 3 reasons Shams was confident. Reason 1, the Lakers have lacked a genuine high-volume mid-range bucket getter for exactly the moments a possession breaks down late in games. DeRozan, even at 37, remains one of the most reliable pure scorers of his generation. Reason 2, Redick's staff wants a second unit closer who doesn't need plays called for him specifically. Talk to me in the comments. Does DeRozan's age and declining defense worry you enough to overshadow the scoring pedigree on a minimum deal? Go! Reason 3, the specific detail about using public interest as leverage confirms real, informed sourcing into DeRozan's camp's actual strategy throughout this entire process. Now the skeptic, Stephen A. Smith. This man is 37. Every real suitor was somewhere else. Why is Los Angeles the answer nobody saw coming? Fair skepticism worth engaging seriously, but here's the counter. It's a minimum deal, minimal risk, real potential reward. DeRozan remains a genuinely reliable bucket getter in exactly the reduced role this signing represents for him at this stage. Here's the human weight. DeRozan has never won a championship in 17 seasons. A genuine title contender, even in a reduced role, represents his clearest remaining shot at finally winning something real. But the honest risk, his defense has declined significantly, and at his age, a full season of consistent bench minutes isn't guaranteed to hold up physically. Let's talk about why this stayed quiet. Both sides reportedly preferred it that way. DeRozan's camp using other reported interest as leverage. The Lakers avoiding a public bidding war for what amounts to a role player addition. Let's also talk about role clarity. This isn't DeRozan competing with Reeves or Austin for primary touches. It's a genuine bench scoring option deployed specifically in matchup situations against opposing bench units. Let's also talk about the actual production case here. DeRozan averaged 18.4 points, 4.1 assists, and 2.9 rebounds across 77 games in his final Sacramento season, his lowest scoring total since 2012-13, but still genuinely reliable bucket getting on a bad team with little spacing around him. In a genuinely better situation, that efficiency should climb rather than fall further. Let's actually walk through DeRozan's full recent career arc, because it genuinely matters for understanding why this specific opportunity carries real weight for him personally at this exact stage. He spent the tail end of his prime in Sacramento never quite recapturing the sustained team success of his earlier Toronto years, was waived this past summer once the Kings decided to pivot toward developing rookie Darius Acuff at point guard, and has spent months since fielding real, reported interest from Miami, Cleveland, Denver, Detroit, and even his original franchise in Toronto. Let's also spend real time on what genuine locker room culture means for a signing like this, because it's underrated in most breakdowns of moves this specific. A 17-year veteran walking into a new locker room this late in his career needs genuine, real buy-in from the players already established there, and Luka's own specific public endorsement, not a generic welcome, but a detailed statement about actual role and fit, and is exactly the kind of signal that confirms this addition is being treated as a real, deliberate basketball decision. Let's also address the honest question of what happens if this specific bench role simply doesn't produce the way the pitch suggests it will. Derozan's game has always depended heavily on individual shot creation rather than off-ball movement, and there's a legitimate chance his particular skill set doesn't translate as cleanly into a lower usage situational role as this signing's framing assumes it will across a full season. So let me bring it home. Derozan to the Lakers matters because he provides a genuine, proven scoring option this roster's bench has lacked, because the quiet recruiting approach confirms real, deliberate strategy, and because Sham's specific explanation confirms informed sourcing. Luka's own reaction is the receipt. Now here's what I'm watching next. Hit subscribe. If Derozan lands in LA, the next question is exactly how Redick structures bench minutes across an increasingly crowded scoring rotation. I've got a read on it that will surprise you. For now, comments, likes, subscribe. Lakers fans, everyone was watching 4 other teams. Wild autumn. Let's also talk about the actual mechanics of how this quiet pitch reportedly worked, because it's worth spelling out in more specific detail than most coverage bothered to provide. Rather than engaging in the kind of public back and forth several other reported suitors conducted throughout the summer, Pelinka's staff reportedly made one direct, detailed presentation to Derozan's camp early on, specifically framing exactly what his offensive touches would look like in a real second unit role, and then simply waited rather than continuing to negotiate publicly through the media. Let's also spend real time on what this means for the Lakers' broader bench construction heading into the season as a whole. Adding a proven, high-volume scorer at the veteran minimum gives Redick genuine flexibility to stagger his rotation in ways a thinner bench simply wouldn't allow, particularly in stretches where both Luka and the roster's other primary scorers need rest simultaneously during a long regular season. Let's also address Derozan's own defensive decline, honestly, because it's a real, unavoidable part of this evaluation. He has never been an elite individual defender, even in his prime, and at 37, that specific weakness is unlikely to have meaningfully improved. Any team deploying him in real minutes has to account for that trade-off explicitly, rather than focusing purely on the offensive upside he genuinely still provides. Let's also spend real time on how this specific quiet pursuit compares to the more publicly reported ones, because it genuinely reveals something about Derozan's own decision-making process throughout this whole saga. Miami's pursuit, by contrast, was heavily covered from the start, with multiple outlets tracking every meeting and every reported obstacle in real time. That kind of public courtship can create real pressure on a player to simply take whichever offer generates the most momentum, rather than genuinely evaluating fit on its own merits. Let's also talk about what specifically happens to Derozan's own legacy conversation if this partnership actually works out the way this pitch suggests it could. He has spent his entire career being described as one of the most gifted pure scorers never to reach a conference finals, let alone a title. Even a genuine, real contribution off a championship contending bench would meaningfully reshape how his career gets remembered by fans who've watched him fall short for nearly 2 decades now. Let's also address one more time what this quiet approach specifically protected against throughout the process. A public bidding war, once other reported suitors caught wind of it, could have driven Derozan's asking price above the minimum this front office was actually willing to offer for a bench role, regardless of how much they genuinely wanted him in that specific spot. Let's also talk about the specific Toronto homecoming angle that never actually materialized, because it's worth understanding as part of the fuller picture here. Derozan remains the franchise's all-time leading scorer, and a reunion there carried obvious sentimental weight that reportedly went seriously considered before this Lakers pitch ultimately won out on pure basketball terms instead of nostalgia. Let's also talk about the specific fourth quarter numbers that made Derozan such a trusted closer for so many years around this league. Across his career, Derozan has consistently ranked among the league's most efficient clutch time scorers, a genuinely rare skill that tends to age more gracefully than pure athleticism does. That specific, proven, late-game reliability is exactly the value proposition Pelinka's staff reportedly pitched hardest when actually recruiting him. Let's also talk about the honest comparison to Miami's own pursuit one final time, because it deserves closing attention here. Multiple reports specifically named the Heat as the presumed frontrunner given their reported prioritization of Derozan after missing on other targets earlier in free agency, which makes this quiet outcome an even bigger surprise to national coverage that had genuinely settled on a different expected ending weeks ago. Let's also talk about what this specific signing means for the roster's overall depth chart heading into final camp decisions. Adding a proven scorer at the minimum likely affects rotation minutes for some of the roster's younger wings, a real ripple effect worth tracking as the team finalizes its bench hierarchy before the regular season actually begins. Let's also close with one more honest note on Derozan's own personal motivation here specifically. By multiple accounts, he specifically prioritized real championship odds over maximizing his own final payday, a genuinely rare veteran mindset that speaks directly to how much winning a title actually means to him at this exact stage of a long, accomplished career. Let's also note the specific irony that Derozan, a player defined by scoring volume for nearly 2 decades, is now embracing exactly the kind of reduced role his younger self might never have accepted, a genuine sign of real maturity this late in his career. Let's close on this. Pelinka moved quietly and moved early, and that specific patience is exactly what let this deal close before any other reported suitor could actually pull Derozan away with a louder, more public offer of their own. Redick himself has publicly praised exactly this kind of veteran shot creator in prior media commentary, well before any of this specific pursuit became real, which adds genuine independent credibility to the idea that this fit was actually evaluated rather than assembled purely out of convenience once other options fell through elsewhere. That's the receipt worth remembering. Wild autumn indeed for a fan base that never saw this specific name coming.